Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's me, Brandy, and I'm here with your Native history today. And I hope that excites you guys, and if it does, definitely hit the subscribe button. And we're just going to kind of pick up where we left off from last week. We were talking about the Red Stick Clan, Horseshoe Bend, and now we're in Seminole territory. So what I do basically is just tell history while I do my makeup because it gives me something to do with my hands basically. And if you want to know what I use on my face in the video, I will list it down below in the description. But anyway, let's go ahead and get this party started. So first off, happy Halloween, everybody. Yes, today is Halloween, and I'm super excited. It's one of my favorite holidays of the year. You'd think I'd be doing a witch video today, but I'm not. I did that on Monday. So we're doing Native American history today. And so we're going to pick up where we left off with the Seminole, like I say, with the Seminoles and the Muskogee. Muskogee's being pushed from their land, and they have now decided to enter Seminole territory, which is a territory that is not a part of the United States yet. It's actually Spanish. It's part of the Spanish coast of, it's in Florida. It's the Panhandle of Florida. Anyway, so they find safe haven with the Seminoles. They also allow escaped slaves to come and stay with them as well. And they actually adopted what they did and things like that. And so this story, it gets really, really, really interesting. And trust me, you guys are going to absolutely love it. It's dark, and I understand, you guys, that this kind of stuff makes people feel a little bit uncomfortable. I got a lot of backlash with the other video, but not really backlash, just more of people getting upset. And I understand, because this is something that is it's a very delicate issue. It's an issue that the United States doesn't want to recognize at all, and it's rarely talked about. And so I just feel like it needs to be said. This kind of history is not the kind of history that's in the history books, and it really should be, because that's how we learn from our mistakes. You know what I mean? Just saying. So, anyways. So, our Muskogees, they have not given up, even though they've been pushed from their land. They are not giving up, you guys. No, no, no. They flee down to Seminole territory, like I say, down there by the Everglades and all that fun stuff, where they have set up a safe haven down there for First Nations. Yeah, we'll say that, First Nations. And now I hear the dogs are howling. So you know what that means? There's the ambulance coming. So I probably need to stop this. Hold on. Of course, we got to enter Andrew Jackson here. He wants all of them destroyed. And he decided he wants to go down to Seminole territory to do it. This is the first phase of the Seminole Wars, okay? But he made a mistake in this first try, okay? He invaded the Seminole lands, but the Seminole lands belonged to the Spanish. So to the Spanish, this wasn't an invasion, right? Even though they are letting the natives stay there and the runaway slaves, they're letting them stay there, but they're like, no, bro, you can't just come up on our land like that. Like, what are you doing? You can't just walk up on here and think that, you could just, because of what he was trying to do, his reason for invading was to retrieve plantation owners' property, which is the runaway slaves. So that was how he was trying to. He's like, oh no, man, I'm just trying to come over here and retrieve our property. Basically, is what he's saying. And so they're like, no, dude. So he got pushed out that time. All right. Now the second time he decides to invade ends up being one of the longest foreign waged wars in history until the Vietnam War, this Seminole War, okay? That's how big it was. And, compare it to Vietnam, Jesus. I'm just saying. Vietnam was nuts in itself. So anyway, the Seminole Nation had created resistance and held dozens of Indian runaways and escaped slaves. These slaves actually absorbed the culture of the natives, which is freaking awesome. They spoke their language, they did what they did, and they learned from them, which is the whole point. And so they weren't going to let the natives were like, no, we're not going to let these people free. No, that's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. They're not your property, basically, is what they were trying to say. Now, the current president in office is not so swell of a guy either. This is Madison that we're talking about. And he gets pissed in 1818. And he's like, okay, look, I'm going to sick my boy, Jackson, and all his militia people down to the Seminole territory. And they're just going to do whatever they want to do. Whatever I tell them to do, they're going to do it, basically. And so he sends his little, his little doggy down there to go down there and destroy a bunch of things. They destroyed many of the Seminole settlements, captured the Spanish fort at Pensacola. They brought down the Spanish government. And, oh man, it just gets so much more messed up. And then they failed in destroying, they still failed in destroying the native resistance. They still fought them off, y'all. And this is one war, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of proud because they never actually conquered the Seminoles. They never do. They never could. That was just, of course it would be given up later by the Spanish, but we'll get down that way, I'm sure, in later videos. But, so there was a senator, and his name was Thomas Hart Benton of Missouri. And he said armed occupation was the true way of settling a conquered country. Okay. So they think that the Indians went there and that they conquered that country, and that's how they got the land. No, they didn't conquer anything. I mean, they might have. I mean, I'm sure that there were wars and things like that, but that's incredibly. We're talking about U.S. history. This is where we're at. It's U.S. history, okay? And so you got to think that. I mean, it was built on the same thing that we're doing today, which is genocide. I mean, it's still going on today. These poor natives are in the worst way in some of these reservations, some of these documentaries I watch. It makes me freaking sad to think that anybody would think that people living in that way would be okay. But anyway, sorry I got on my little soapbox there for a minute, it just hits me in a certain type of way. So anyway, he sends 3,000 people. Madison's like, look, dude, go down there, do your thing, tear up stuff. Of course, they hurt civilians. They killed innocent people. They always do. It's never just the people they want to fight. They always have to end up killing a bunch of innocent people for no reason, So the Thomas Hart guy ends up going and saying something else, too. That is kind of just, ugh. He says, quote unquote, the children of Israel entered the promised land with implements of husbandry in one hand and the weapons of war in the other. Now, this basically reflects their belief in using white supremacy to spread Christianity. Okay. I know that sounds bad, but that's what it is. This was white privilege. Okay. They were trying to go back and get their property, and they were trying to get rid of the natives because they thought that they owned everything. That, once they had everybody's land, they were going to own everything, and everybody was going to be looking up to them. And these guys didn't care about the little people. They didn't care about poor people. They didn't care about black people, Native American. They didn't care about any of those people. The only thing they cared about was getting land and extending their plantations. That's exactly what the whole plan was from the beginning, So they just kept pushing them further and further. It's kept pushing them so much. So the U.S. annexed Florida in 1819, inviting Anglo-Saxon Americans to settle. They're like, hey, just come on over here and hang out and chill. And yeah, don't worry about the natives, don't worry about them. Well, we're going to do something with them. Don't worry about them, Makes me feel a certain type of way. And of course, in 1821, Jackson becomes the military guy in Florida. Yeah, isn't that fantastic? Oh, good old military guy in Florida. And so when all these settlers come, okay, they start getting pushed out by the Seminoles. Because, Seminoles are like, hey, it's still our land. What are y'all doing here, And so the Seminoles never sued for peace. No, they didn't sue. They weren't as petty as, say, the colonists were at the time. They didn't sue for peace, because they didn't feel like they needed to. They didn't feel like they did anything wrong. So why should they sue for peace when they weren't even the ones that stirred the pot? You feel me? Which I totally understand. And then some were sent, and they never signed any treaties. No, they did not. Good for them. Good for them. I'm so glad they didn't. Because those treaties, I'm telling you, there's one that's coming up that Thomas Jefferson, pretty much, not Thomas Jefferson, I always say that. Well, I mean, he gets into this too, though. He does. Yeah. So between 1814, then I gotta look at 1824. I gotta look at these anyway because they're in a bunch of numbers. 3/4 of present day Alabama, let's see, and Florida, 1/3 of Tennessee, and 1/5 of Georgia and Mississippi, parts of Kentucky and North Carolina became private property to the colonizers. Yeah, they made it private property. They didn't even let the poor people that were still settlers sit on it. Yeah, that makes sense. And so they own that. And I'm going to read something to y'all that a chief Cherokee principal said. And it's very, very, very important. Very important because it kind of summarizes exactly what's happening here. And I'm not trying to make any of you guys mad. I'm just trying to give you facts here. That's what happened. They took the land. They taxed them for their own land, which they never claimed ownership of because they didn't have a word for ownership in the native language. No, they did not. That's what a lot of people don't understand. That's what a lot of the colonizers didn't understand. They were like, how are they functioning without having money? Well, they traded goods, Certain things grow in certain areas certain tribes can't get, so they made trades, But let me read this piece for you. This is from the Cherokee Principal Chief Wilma Mankiller. Okay, it's what she wrote in her autobiography. The fledgling United States government's method of dealing with Native people, a process which then included systematic genocide, property theft, and total subjugation, reached its nadir in 1830 under the federal policy of President Andrew Jackson. More than any other president, he used forcible removal to expel the eastern tribes from their land. From the very birth of the nation, the United States government truly had carried out a vigorous operation of extermination and removal. Decades before Jackson took office, during the administration of Thomas Jefferson, it was already cruelly apparent that many Native American leaders that had any hope for tribal autonomy was cursed. So were any thoughts of peaceful coexistence with white citizens. This is what they thought at the time. That's so sad. That's exactly what he went to. When he became president, the day he became president, he actually opened the White House to the public, and a lot of the poor people came in there because they supported him the first time he was elected. They thought he came to America like we did. He was a poor Irish, Scottish person. He grew up, all of his family has passed away, so the people felt like they related to Andrew Jackson. But what really was happening was he was being incredibly motivated by money and greed and having as many plantations and slaves as possible. That was their whole entire point, was getting as much land as they could. And so this is where our next president steps in. And of course, that's Andrew Jackson. Like I say, Madison steps down, Andrew Jackson gets elected. You know, what makes me laugh is in history books, they've got, every time they talk about Andrew Jackson's presidency, which, by the way, he was the 7th president of the United States, just in case you didn't know. And there's like the Jacksonian period, is what they call it, the age of democracy. Yeah, we're going to get right there in just a second. The birth of democracy, because guess who was the ones that created the Democratic Party? Yeah, Thomas Jefferson and Andrew Jackson. Yeah, they both were like co-founders of the Democratic Party. Okay, and they used this party as a way to get people to understand that they need to go and just take this land. Like it belongs to you, point blank period. We found it, and these people need to get off of it so that we can tend to it and turn it into whatever we want to turn it into. And so, yes, Thomas Jefferson was the thinker, obviously, and Jackson was the little doggy that did everything that he said. So after 4 wars with the Muskogees and pushing them east of the Mississippi, they finally got them to go, but just getting land. It's the only thing this man cared about in his whole life, I swear. It makes me sad. It makes me sad that this land was built on genocide. But that, oh gosh, it just is what it is. You know, that's history. History for you. After the 4 wars with the Muskogee, Jackson goes before Congress and he says this, okay, quote unquote, the immigration should be voluntary, for it would be as cruel as unjust to compel the Aborigines, excuse me, I can't believe I said that, to abandon the graves of their fathers and seek a home in a distant land. Well, that sounds nice. But they should be distinctly informed that if they remain within the limits of the United States, they must be subjected to their laws. Okay. In return for their obedience as individuals, they will without doubt be protected in the enjoyment of these possessions, which they have been improved by their industry. Basically, we're doing you a favor, bro, is what he's saying. No, you're not. You're not really doing that. No, that's not what you're doing. No. The Jacksonian period is a joke. Just saying. I really hope they start to push away from that. And so when he was inaugurated, I said he opened up the public. It was like, hey, everybody come. But once elected, he began the removal of indigenous farmers, destroying their towns, destroying their farms. He wanted their land. That's the only thing that he was currently focused on, was their land. They didn't care what he had to do to get it. Okay. So Georgia began claiming that the Cherokee land was public. Remember, the Cherokees had sold off some land. Or no, they didn't sell. They didn't sell it off. Okay. So once elected, he began the famous native removal, all over the South. This is going to lead to the Trail of Tears, which is what we're going to do next week. That's where we're going to pick up. But Georgia began claiming that the Cherokee land was public. Okay. Now, this kind of caused a ruckus. This caused people to come over, and they started to, invade the Cherokee land. Even though Georgia says it's public, Cherokees were like, no, that's not public land. I don't know what you're talking about. And so anyway, they said that, the Cherokee Constitution was null and void. They had their own constitution. Believe it or not, y'all, the First Nations individuals were very much so established before any settlers came here. They had towns and things like that. Like, everybody thinks that natives just lived in teepees and stuff. No. I mean, some did. Yeah, the nomads did and things like that, but not all of them. They had established areas. Like, it's just mind-blowing that these people come in and did all this in the name of Christianity, of all things. Now, the Cherokees, they did file a case against Georgia. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. They filed a case against Georgia, the Cherokees, and their case, they won. They won their case. They wanted their constitution to stick, and so they took it to trial, and they were like, okay, yeah, it's going to stick. The Supreme Court. So what's Jackson do? He ignores the Supreme Court completely. He's just like, Supreme what? I don't have to worry about that. Saying this judge will have to uphold the law while Jackson had an army. Tell me that's not a threat. Tell me that's not a threat that man just threw at the Supreme Court, saying, I have an army and you are a judge. So you protect the people. Meanwhile, I have an army and I can do it better, is basically what he's saying. Okay. But then in 1829 brought the gold rush, okay, which this shook up the Cherokee territory again, okay, because that brought 40,000 people who were looking for gold in Georgia. Yes, that's exactly right. Jackson took advantage of this under the Indian Removal Act. This act was to cede all the Cherokee lands in exchange for land in Indian territory. Okay, this is what he said. And he's like, okay, I know that you have land here, but I really need y'all to get out. So I'm going to send you east of the Mississippi, and I'm going to give you the same amount of land there. Even though you've got to think these people have lived in certain climates across this continent. And so when you move somebody from Florida to Oklahoma and you make them walk it, a lot of devastating things are going to happen. A lot of devastating things are going to happen. That's what makes me so sad about this. So they jailed a bunch of Cherokee leaders. And then he writes up, Jackson decides he's going to write up this piece that says, he jails them, closed the Cherokee printing press during negotiations. That is not the color I wanted. That is way too bright. He forced signatures from the handpicked Cherokees. He put a bunch of the leaders in jail, the ones that could sign, treaties and things like that. He put all them in jail, and then went and forced some other just random Cherokees to sign this act or whatever to make them all go onto the Trail of Tears. Yeah. And unfortunately, we're going to pick up back next week with the Trail of Tears, because the Trail of Tears actually runs right through my town. And I remember growing up that as and going, and we would go around town and things like that. There were always these signs up that said Trail of Tears, like this is the Trail of Tears, And so it came up right in the middle of my town, right? But now when I go and look, those signs are not there. They're changed. It's like, it says like the Tannehill Trail. That's what it says. I couldn't quite remember, but that's what they say now. The signs used to say, this is where the Trail of Tears is, But now it doesn't say that. It says this is the Tannehill Trail is basically what they call it. So they're trying to erase it completely, even in my state, where they had the signs, and I know they're trying to not like bring attention to it because they feel bad, maybe. But at the same time, these are things that need to be learned. We live on the Trail of Tears. The natives walked through this state to get to Oklahoma, and that's a long fucking walk, y'all. And the next episode is going to be probably a lot longer. It's going to go a lot deeper, because it's really going to go deep into the Trail of Tears. The devastation that it caused, how many people were lost. I mean, you can imagine somebody going from Florida to Oklahoma and the climate change alone making you ill. These are things that none of these people thought about or cared about. Even if they did think about it, they didn't care. And So the lesson that we need to take from this today, first off, congratulations to the Seminoles for not giving up. Congratulations to them. And I hate that the Cherokee had to give up their lands just because somebody found a nugget of gold, even though the natives had all the gold they could ever possibly need. But it's never really said anything. Gold wasn't a thing to them like it was to the settlers. It wasn't, it wasn't a currency. It was just gold. They used it whether in rituals or in spiritual practices, and things like that. We'll know. But at the same time, I know this kind of history is hard to hear, but it needs to be heard. But the Seminoles, very proud of my Seminoles down there in the Everglades. They still are there today. They never got defeated. No, never signed a treaty, nothing like that. And I forgot to mute my computer. I'm so very sorry. But anyways, I love you guys. I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Have an awesome Halloween, okay? And I'll see you guys on Monday with the new witch history video. I love doing those. Those are my favorites, I think. I like doing the native ones too, but they are kind of sad and depressing, and hearing that these are elected officials of our they're like, their faces are on mountains and stuff. Like, I mean, it's celebrated here, genocide. It makes me sad, but it is what it is. So that's just my opinion. Like I say, I'm just giving the facts out from what I've read from books, and of course I give my opinion in it because I'm going to, and that's just how I am. I love you guys. Have a wonderful day. Have a fun Halloween. Stay safe. Don't go to jail. If nobody told you today, I love you.